Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Toxicity in the Workplace, Coping with Difficult People on the Job by Shonda Lackey, Ph.D., narrated by Joell and Jacob. Introduction. Are you fed up with the way some of your coworkers treat you? And maybe even wondering if you should quit your job because you just can't take any more of your toxic workplace? Do you feel alone? As if you're the only person in your office who sees what's really happening? Spending many hours in professional situations like this each week can make you feel stressed out, isolated, and trapped. You may keep your concerns to yourself because you feel as if no one understands or cares about what you're going through. If you do speak up, you may fear that your friends, family, and other coworkers will tire of hearing you talk about your work problems. You may also suspect that they won't understand how frustrated you are because they haven't had to face what you're up against in your daily work environment. This is especially true if the people you're close to have worked in generally supportive environments and believe their job gives them a sense of purpose. Perhaps they only deal with the typical stress of tight deadlines or minor conflicts with coworkers. Chances are that you picked this book because your workplace problems are more severe. Your colleagues may pass their work duties off to you, belittle you, stand over your shoulder to double-check your work, or dominate the office with passive-aggressive manipulation or angry outbursts. Your family and friends may wonder why you can't just quit, but leaving a job is not always easy. The pressure of bills and other financial responsibilities, plus the process of starting over, can make it feel impossible to leave. Even the idea of searching for another job can be daunting. It's also difficult to consider leaving if you take satisfaction in the work you do. You may think that if anyone should leave the job or change their behavior, it should be your colleague, but difficult people rarely seem to leave jobs on their own or get fired for their behavior. In fact, they often seem to get bolder when their destructive actions go unchecked. And difficult colleagues may even seem to earn rewards for their behavior. Does your difficult colleague get raises and promotions, while you only seem to get criticized despite working hard? Do the most seemingly problematic people in your workplace get recognition, while it doesn't come your way? Perhaps your boss or other colleagues appear to have a positive view of the coworker who treats you rudely. These dynamics are frustrating, but unfortunately, all too common. Over the years, many people in similar situations have come to me for help in figuring out how to work with difficult coworkers and function better in a toxic work environment. As a licensed clinical psychologist, I've helped several people who could not immediately quit their jobs and had to find a way to work with colleagues they considered difficult. Aside from slowing down productivity, toxic workplace behaviors can lead some employees to experience depression, anxiety, and other psychological problems. Sometimes a workplace is negatively affected by the toxic behavior of employees struggling with untreated mental health problems. Yet workplaces are often unprepared to handle this range of health concerns in employees who exhibit toxic behaviors, and in their colleagues who struggle with this negativity. Talking about mental health issues may be taboo. People who affect others with their toxic behaviors may not want to disclose their personal issues. Others may not be aware of the impact of their behavior. Either way, you may be criticized for pointing out problems. Many of the people I have treated sought help because they started to experience mental health problems like depression and anxiety as a result of their stressful work environment. Some of these people had never experienced mental health issues before. Others had a history of mental health problems that resurfaced because of the stress of working with people who behaved in dysfunctional ways. One of the most helpful things they learned was how to respond to their colleagues' behavior by being assertive in their communication and actions. Through therapy, they learned how to manage their emotions and to work around dysfunctional behavior. In cases where the workplace and colleagues proved resistant to change, many of the people I treated gained the confidence to execute an exit strategy and move on to healthier workplaces. I have also treated people who came to realize how their own dysfunctional behavior caused problems within their workplace. These people learned how to interact with their colleagues in a more compassionate and productive way. This book is intended for people who have coworkers who are difficult to deal with because they may have a mental disorder. These coworkers may be your peers, your boss, or people you manage. This book is not a substitute for mental health treatment. If you are really struggling, please consult the resources section to locate a licensed mental health professional, such as a psychologist, for personalized help. This book is also not intended to encourage you to diagnose your coworkers. Keep in mind that only a qualified mental health professional can diagnose someone with a mental disorder. However, being aware of the symptoms of a possible mental disorder may give you some insight into your coworkers' behavior and prevent you from taking it personally. Dealing with toxic behaviors can be confusing and upsetting, but understanding the possible causes can help you gain clarity. Instead of getting frustrated or distracted by your colleagues' actions, you can decrease your stress, gain peace of mind, and focus on producing quality work. My hope is that this book will reassure you that you are not alone. My goal is to help you gain insight into the possible causes of your coworkers' behavior and give you practical strategies you can use right away to help you deal with it. Although you can't control your coworkers' behavior, you can improve your situation by learning how to change the way you respond to it. Chapter 1. Understanding Difficult Coworkers and Toxic Behavior. This chapter will help you understand how mental health problems affect workplace productivity and relationships. When you understand the possible causes of a colleague's behavior, you'll be better equipped to handle your interactions with them. Common mental disorders covered include anxiety and mood, personality, and neurodevelopmental disorders. I'll also describe how the behavior of someone with any of these suspected mental disorders may lead to workplace problems. Finally, I'll share with you a summary of behavioral and communication techniques designed to decrease your stress and help you be more productive at work. You can use these techniques right away when interacting with your colleagues. More than a personality clash. No person or workplace is perfect. Even if you love your job and your work environment, you're bound to experience some conflict occasionally. You and your manager may have different ideas about the most effective way to get a job done. Maybe a coworker who is generally collaborative has a bad day and takes it out on you by making snappy comments. Perhaps tensions increase and tempers flare during high-stress periods when your team is driving hard to meet a deadline. However, there is a difference between typical workplace conflict and difficulty getting along with someone who has a mental disorder. The key difference is that a colleague with a mental disorder tends to be more deeply set in their ways, which makes it more difficult to reason with them or negotiate an alternative way of interacting. Their behavior will likely be more extreme and resistant to change, yet they usually don't see their behavior as problematic. This is especially true when someone has a personality disorder, such as narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, borderline personality disorder, BPD, or obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, OCPD. For example, someone who isn't affected by a mental health problem may talk over you in a meeting. They may become so excited about an idea that they just can't hold back their input. It's also possible that they think you're taking too long to get to the point, and they want to push the conversation along. If in this situation you let your colleague know that you don't like the way they are treating you, they will likely be mindful of your feelings and probably apologize. They will also probably recognize how their behavior could negatively affect your workplace and relationship and will be careful not to talk over you again. Someone with a mental disorder may not think they are doing anything wrong if they talk over you. They may accuse you of being too sensitive or criticize the way you presented your idea. In this case, your colleague will probably not care about your feelings or make any attempt to change their behavior. In fact, they will probably talk over you at the next meeting, as if you had never addressed the issue with them. People with mental disorders typically interact with people in a similar manner. they will probably behave the same way when interacting with their boss, peer, or a person they manage. In some cases, such as when a colleague might have NPD, you may see them dial back their behavior when interacting with people whom they perceive as powerful. But when your colleague has a mental disorder, their behavior typically has a consistent pattern that is resistant to your attempts to reach a resolution. If this person is a manager, the turnover rates of people they manage are usually high. This book is for people who are trying their best to work with difficult colleagues, but are being pushed to the limit. You may have a boss who keeps checking in on you to make sure you're completing tasks the way they prefer. They may flood your inbox or call you after hours asking for updates. You may manage a team member whose forgetful and sluggish behavior makes you anxious about meeting deadlines, or one who thinks they know it all and treats you in a condescending manner. Yet another colleague may pit you against another, causing team dynamics to break down. If you're getting worn out dealing with the way people act in your workplace and just can't seem to take any more, I hope that the tips in this book make your life less stressful. Refrain from diagnosing your coworker. Avoid informal diagnosing of a coworker's potential mental disorder. Only a qualified mental health professional can diagnose someone by conducting a full psychological assessment. No one else can be completely sure if a person has a mental disorder at all. There is also significant symptom overlap between some mental disorders, so without a true diagnosis, it is difficult to know what problems your colleague may be dealing with. Trying to diagnose a coworker may make things worse. You may then struggle to see their humanity or pathologize all of their behavior as a symptom, discounting valid input. For example, if your colleague assertively disagrees with a business strategy, you may discount it as a symptom rather than consider their potentially useful insight. Considering possible motivations for your colleague's behavior may decrease your frustration and stress. As you learn about what your colleague may be going through, you can refrain from labeling them, choose not to take their behavior personally, and consider the possibility that their behavior is influenced by problems with the way they perceive themselves and others. Toxic behavior versus toxic people. What comes to mind when you hear the word toxic? Maybe the first thing you think about is something unsafe and poisonous, like chemicals. Or maybe you think about workplace environments like those that have been exposed during recent scandals in various industries. In some workplaces, dysfunctional behavior is harmful and can cause production and team dynamics to break down. This behavior can also spread throughout various departments and infect entire companies. It can be tempting to call one of your colleagues toxic, but that's not always the most helpful approach. When we call another person toxic, it often makes our interactions with them worse. You both may feel hopeless that change can ever be possible. Your colleague may wonder how they can change something you've determined is a fundamental part of who they are. Calling a person toxic also makes it easier to ostracize them. Some of these people may have mental disorders. Feeling stigmatized can make their problems more severe and make them even less likely to get help. This book focuses on the toxic behavior of people at work. Focusing on your colleague's behavior means that specific things can be changed. Do they try to get you to do their work? Do they speak to you in a condescending or rude way? Are they usually late or unreliable on team projects? Focusing on behavior can also help you develop some empathy for your colleague's situation while gaining the ability to assert yourself. How this book can help. You may have chosen this book because you're feeling stuck and overwhelmed due to all the challenges in your workplace. You may dread going into work and are just trying to figure out how much you can take before you quit. This is a very stressful situation and can seem impossible to fix. So, what can you do now? This book will give you comprehensive information about a variety of mental disorders that affect workplace behavior and treatment of coworkers, insight into how to understand your coworkers' behavior, and tips for how to cope with it. I hope that you'll feel more confident and less stressed by putting these suggestions into practice. This book has been tailored to people who have coworkers whose dysfunctional behavior may be explained in an untreated mental disorder. These coworkers may be your peers, your boss, or people you manage. The information in this book is not a substitute for mental health treatment. Still, having knowledge of what it's like for someone to struggle with a possible mental disorder may decrease some of the resentment, anger, and stress you could be experiencing while working with your colleague. You will gain insight into your coworker's interpersonal style, as well as practical tips that work best with that specific style. You can't control how your coworker behaves, but you can choose how and where you want to focus your energy. Overview of common mental health concerns. According to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 5th edition, DSM-5, a mental disorder involves a major problem with the way a person thinks, feels, and behaves. These impairments make it difficult to function socially and in other areas of life, such as work or school. The disorders listed here from each DSM-5 category are those most likely to lead to destructive behavior in your workplace. Anxiety disorders. Individuals who suffer from anxiety disorders experience fear or worry so severe that it interferes with daily life. Generalized anxiety disorder. Someone with this disorder exhibits worry about several major areas of life and often assumes the worst is going to happen. They may be restless, frustrated, tense, tired, and forgetful. Someone at work who possibly has generalized anxiety disorder usually assumes the worst, so they may approach most situations as if they're a matter of life and death. These individuals may literally run back and forth nervously. They may also have memory problems due to poor concentration. Panic disorder. Someone with this disorder experiences panic attacks, which involve physiological symptoms such as sweating, heart palpitations, and shortness of breath. A person having a panic attack may also have a sense of dying or losing control, and they may feel as if they or their surroundings are not real. Someone with panic disorder may exhibit sudden changes in breathing. They may appear as if they've blanked out and can seem disconnected from you. They may then need to excuse themselves from a meeting or a discussion to calm down. Social phobia. A person with social phobia has extreme anxiety about social interactions and fears being judged negatively. This individual typically avoids anxiety-inducing situations or shows up anyway with significant anxiety. People with social phobia will usually avoid tasks that involve interacting with people, and they may have trouble speaking up in meetings. They may also avoid office parties or other social events and refrain from engaging in small talk. You'll find more about how to interact with someone with a possible anxiety disorder in chapters 2, 3, 4, and 7. Mood disorders. Individuals who suffer from mood disorders experience frequent and significant fluctuations in their emotional state. Major depressive disorder. Someone with this disorder may experience depressed mood, loss of interest in activities, weight loss or gain, lack of sleep or excessive sleep, and fatigue. They may feel worthless, move slowly, and have impaired memory. It is possible that they think about death or suicide, or have planned to die by suicide. Someone at work with possible major depressive disorder may be forgetful, unmotivated, and irritable. They may arrive late to work, call out sick frequently, and isolate themselves from others. They may speak and appear to move slowly. Major depressive disorder is particularly likely if a colleague previously performed at a high level and then a noticeable change in their demeanor and productivity occurred. Bipolar disorder. A person with bipolar disorder can be diagnosed with bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. People with bipolar 1 must have experienced a manic episode consisting of an elevated or irritable mood. Other symptoms of a manic episode include high self-esteem, decreased sleep, talkativeness, racing thoughts, difficulty concentrating, increased motivation and action toward social, work, school, or sexual goals, and involvement in high-risk activities. A major depressive episode may or may not occur. People with bipolar II have never experienced a manic episode, but they have experienced hypomania, fewer manic symptoms for a lesser period than mania. They must also experience a major depressive episode, as described in the previous section. Someone with possible bipolar disorder at work may show signs of depression, as described earlier. They may also show signs of mania or hypomania. These people may exhibit extreme shifts in productivity and in the quality of their work. They may be creative, productive, and charismatic for a period. Then their mood may shift and cause them to be isolated, irritable, and unable to complete tasks. You'll learn more about how to interact with someone with a possible mood disorder in chapters 3, 4, and 7. Personality disorders. A personality disorder is a long-standing pattern of rigid behavior in many different settings. This behavior diverges from cultural expectations and can affect an individual's thinking, feelings, social interactions, and impulse control. Narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. An individual with NPD may think of themselves as superior or special. They may be manipulative, envious, and focused on success or power. Often, they need to be praised, act entitled, show off, and can't understand the feelings of others. Someone at work with possible NPD might have a reputation for being a know-it-all. They are quick to criticize and slow to offer praise. When they make mistakes, they don't take responsibility. They are often hostile and may have a menacing stare and an imposing stance. These individuals may ask personal questions so they can exploit their colleagues' weaknesses. They typically associate most with colleagues whom they consider powerful, while ignoring everyone else and using a condescending tone if they do speak to them. They use most opportunities to make themselves seem important by speaking about their achievements or social connections. And they must be the center of attention and dominate conversations by not letting anyone else speak. These individuals can become angry enough to yell at or threaten coworkers when they feel criticized. You'll find more about working with someone with possible NPD in chapters 5, 6, and 7. Borderline personality disorder, BPD. An individual with BPD has a history of unstable relationships. They are sensitive to abandonment and often alternate between thinking the best and worst of someone. They can sometimes become paranoid and suspicious of others. Their self-image is also unstable, and they are often impulsive. Individuals with this disorder may attempt suicide or engage in self-mutilation. They can also experience sudden shifts in mood, as well as inappropriate anger. Someone with possible BPD at work may have intense shifts in mood. They may act as if a coworker is their best friend, then be cold and distant with that person hours later. They will often sabotage the work of others to make their colleagues seem incompetent. Individuals with this disorder will often try to figure out a coworker's insecurities so they can use them to make that person feel less confident. They can get angry when they perceive rejection or receive criticism, and may even perceive criticism when there is none. For example, someone with possible BPD might misinterpret the facial expression of a colleague who is deep in thought and think this person is upset with them. These individuals may also make their colleagues uncomfortable by invading their personal space or by sharing personal information about themselves. They often pit one coworker against another, resulting in devastating team dynamics. You'll find more about working with coworkers with possible BPD in chapters 5 and 7. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, OCPD. An individual with this disorder is driven by perfectionism. They are rigid in their thinking and set strict standards guided by details, rules, and lists. Rather than being productive, these standards often slow down the process involved in completing a task. They often demand things be done a certain way and may have difficulty assigning responsibility to others. Individuals with this disorder may sacrifice relationships with friends and family because of their commitment to work. They may not like spending money and may refuse to throw out things they no longer need. Someone with possible OCPD at work may have a reputation for being a micromanager. These individuals may set unrealistic standards and be hesitant to delegate tasks. For example, they may ask a colleague to keep revising a presentation to the point where it puts them behind schedule. Individuals with this disorder are typically afraid to change workplace protocols, even if there are more effective ways of getting things done. They may appear well-organized and rely on checklists or color-coordinated systems. They may seem overly committed to work, rarely taking vacations or calling out sick. You'll find more about how to interact with someone with possible OCPD in Chapter 7. Neurodevelopmental disorders. Individuals with neurodevelopmental disorders experience impairments in the way their brain and/or central nervous system develops, which can lead to problems with motor skills, learning, and communication. Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, ADHD. An individual with this disorder may have symptoms of inattention and/or hyperactivity and impulsivity. One symptom of inattention is difficulty paying close attention. They may seem as if their mind is elsewhere when you're speaking to them. Other signs include not completing tasks, difficulty organizing, losing things that are needed to complete tasks, and avoiding situations in which they need to pay attention for a prolonged period. Symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsivity can include fidgeting, leaving seated positions, inappropriate running or climbing, difficulty carrying out actions quietly, talking a lot, interrupting others, and impatience. Someone at work with possible ADHD may be hyperactive and impulsive. They may speak before they think and make insensitive comments. This person may also have difficulty waiting their turn and may interrupt other people in meetings. Due to their organizational problems, they may be forgetful, have difficulty with time management, and keep their workspace noticeably messy. Someone with ADHD may not seem to pay attention at work and may ask colleagues to repeat themselves several times. You'll find more about how to interact with someone with possible ADHD at work in Chapters 3, 4, and 7. By the numbers. Stigma about mental disorders can cause some people to feel embarrassed and hesitant to seek treatment. People who fear that they may be ostracized may not talk about their mental health problems. They usually feel like they're alone in their experience. Still, statistics show that anyone can suffer from a mental health problem at some point in their life. A National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, study found that in any given year, 19.1% of adults, or 47.6 million people in the United States, have a mental disorder. Among the conditions described in this chapter, 19.1% had an anxiety disorder diagnosis, followed by 7.2% with a major depressive episode, and 2.8% with bipolar disorder. The National Institute of Mental Health also reports that 4.4% of adults have ADHD. It takes time before many people are willing or able to seek treatment for a mental illness. NAMI reports that on average, 11 years pass between people first exhibiting symptoms and seeking treatment. People may lack awareness of a problem, have confusion about the process of seeking treatment, lack funds for services, or fear change. Mental disorders affect people from all backgrounds, but with proper treatment, people can live productive lives. Researchers continue to identify evidence-based solutions that help improve the psychological health of people living with mental disorders. Improving your work situation. You may be unsure how to improve conditions at work caused by your colleagues' toxic behavior. You may be surrounded by disgruntled employees with low morale or asked to take on more responsibilities due to high employee turnover. The office mood may be so bad that you can feel the tension as soon as you walk through the door. Although you may feel some empathy for your coworkers' mental health problems, you may feel resentful or anxious as the stress of a toxic workplace continues to build. Your first instinct may be to let resentment, anger, anxiety, or other negative feelings influence how you respond to your colleague. You may believe that others should behave a certain way, and it can be difficult to accept that their standards and values differ.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?